Hello, this is Niswander and welcome to the NOWMAN show. My guest is Erika Podest. She has a PhD and is a scientist with the Carbon Cycle and Ecosystems Group at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA, in Pasadena, California. Erika, welcome to the NOWMAN show.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a great pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
We met last year at the Green Festival Expo in Los Angeles, and you talked about your work at that time working in the northern latitudes, in the upper ranges of the northern latitudes, and that's what, Alaska, Canada, Russia, Eurasia? Correct?
Yes.
So give us a little update, of what your work has been, basically starting with JPL N.A.S.A.
Sure. So part of my research has focused in what's called the northern high latitudes, as you mentioned, Alaska, Canada, Eurasia. And what I'm looking at there is looking at the vegetation growing season length. Okay, so the northern high latitudes are the areas of the world that are ground zero for global warming, for increasing temperatures. These are the areas that are most affected by changes in temperature. And what my research entails is looking at this vegetation growing season length in those areas, because during wintertime, vegetation pretty much freezes. So think of it as vegetation hibernates. And during this period of time, there's very little to no exchange of gases between the vegetation and the atmosphere. And by gases, I mean CO2 primarily.
It's just carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide, yes. And when the spring comes around and temperatures go above zero, you've got the beginning of the melt. So the snow melts, you've got liquid water on the ground, the trees thaw, and they can draw water from the ground. And that's the beginning of the growing season, right? And this season lasts from the beginning of spring through early fall, right? And during this period of time, the trees grow and they take up CO2, carbon dioxide, from the atmosphere. So it's like the vegetation, the trees were inhaling CO2.
Yeah.
And there's so much vegetation in the northern high latitudes. This period of time makes a significant effect on global concentrations of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Okay? So what we're seeing through satellite images is whether this period is changing, and what we have been seeing is that it has been getting a little bit longer because of global warming, increasing temperatures.
And speaking of global warming and increasing temperatures, I mean, for those who may think they know what those terms mean, people hear a lot, you know, through media sources of various kinds, primarily online, the terms climate change and global warming. What exactly do these terms mean?
Yeah, so I'll go back to basics. First of all, you hear a lot, yes, about climate change. And climate change can be caused by natural factors, such as volcanic eruptions, for example, or changes in marine currents. El Nino is an example of that. That's a natural cycle. Or changes in the variation of the sun's energy. Okay? And climate change can also be caused by human activities, such as the use of fossil fuels, the emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, or deforestation, for example. Okay? So let me explain to you. Let's go back to basics now.
Yeah,
so what's happening is our Earth is getting warmer, okay? So there's global warming, and you hear about global warming and climate change. Well, our Earth is getting warmer, and it's causing changes in the Earth's climate in different ways. And so the word climate change is more encompassing, it's broader than just the source, which is global warming. Okay?
So when people say global warming, does that pertain to the air temperature or water temperature, or is it both? Is it analyzed as both?
It's the overall temperature of the Earth, yes. And so I'll go back to the basics here again.
Yeah.
So our Earth is surrounded by a layer of gases known as the atmosphere, okay? And the gases in the atmosphere that trap the heat are called greenhouse gases, okay? And the main greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. And the greenhouse effect is this effect of keeping heat in the earth through the greenhouse gases, okay? This is a natural phenomenon, all right? And what we should be concerned about is the perturbation of the greenhouse effect, all right? And so what's happening is we are increasing the concentration of greenhouse gases. So think of these greenhouse gases as forming a blanket around Earth. And when you increase the concentration, that blanket gets thicker. And so more heat is trapped and temperatures on Earth increase, all right? And this increase in temperature causes changes in Earth's climate in different ways. So one way is, for example, the melting of ice, all right? So you've got the melting of ice, like the melting of the Arctic sea ice, that's floating ice, or you've got the melting of ice on land. And the areas where we're particularly concerned are the two big giants of frozen water, which are Greenland and Antarctica. So when that water melts, it ends up in the oceans, and that causes sea level rise.
Which is another issue, because whenever there is one problem, that can lead to another one.
Absolutely,
correct?
yes.
And that's why it's important that there be this balance, because the Earth is, the whole process is a balance.
Absolutely.
You know, in all of nature, you know, there's that give and take that goes on. So now you go in person to these areas in the northern high latitudes.
Correct.
But you also now, because of this incredible technology that has come out of JPL and NASA, you can now look at all this amazing satellite imagery. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a big part of my research is using satellite images to study Earth. And this is really a great way to study Earth, and it's really revolutionized the way that we can study Earth, because now we can observe the same area on a continuous basis, so we can really see how things are changing. And NASA has a satellite fleet that observes the different components of our Earth's environment as related to the oceans, the atmosphere, and the continents.
Fantastic.
And we're understanding how different processes within the different components are interrelated.
And now you work with what's called the SMAP program. And of course, you know, we use acronym. We're an acronym society, you know. Like, so the breakdown of that is soil, moisture, active, passive. So exactly what is that, and what's the program, SMAP?
Okay, so SMAP is a satellite, and we launched the satellite on January 31st, 2015. So a little bit over a year ago, we launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is in near the Santa Barbara area. And the purpose of SMAP is to measure soil moisture globally. All right, so we're producing maps of soil moisture every 3 days.
Wow.
Yes. And you might think, well, why is soil moisture important? It's an important environmental variable because it impacts our lives in different ways. For example, in weather prediction. So if you think of water and the water that's in the soil, that water has a potential to evaporate. And when it does evaporate, it plays a large role in cloud formation and in weather. Okay, so knowing soil moisture can help us better predict weather. Floods is another example. So predicting floods, if you know, for example, that your soils are near saturation and there's a really big rainstorm coming, then we can predict that that area might be at risk for flooding.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's interesting that when you say that, and I think about that, that makes perfect sense, you know?
Yeah.
And now we have the technology where we can actually look at this and we don't have to always be there in person. That's just absolutely amazing. So this satellite was launched a year ago.
Yeah.
And we have some video.
Yeah.
We can look at.
Yeah.
You want to give us some commentary as to what we're looking at?
Sure, let's go through the video. Okay, so what we're seeing here is the Ferry Separation. So we launched using what's called a Delta II rocket from Vandenberg Air Force Base. And our satellite is at 685 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. So here we're separating from the rocket,
So that's the satellite that's actually moving away from the rocket.
Correct, yes.
And the rocket, does that fall to the Earth?
Yeah, actually in this case, the rocket, there was a bit of propellant left specifically to reintroduce that rocket back into Earth.
Now this is, we're looking at, are these solar panels that are?
Okay, so yeah, one of the first things we did was orient our satellite so that it faced the sun so that we could then open our solar panels, and we have 3 solar panels. It was pretty amazing because as soon as those solar panels started to open, we had communication. So we had to power our comm system through using the solar panels to
so that was
as
what,
an energy
how long
source.
after launch was that?
So that was about 45 minutes after launch.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really a very exciting moment to hear a sign of life of your satellite. Yeah.
So you started collecting data at that point?
No. So the way it works with these satellites, and S.M.A.P. in this case, is that it goes through a 3-month commissioning phase. So that means that during this period of time, we check out the different systems and make sure everything works before we continuously start collecting data. And so, yeah, putting a satellite up in space is not like turning on a big circuit breaker and just powering your whole system.
Yeah.
It's a very harsh environment. It's very cold. So the first thing we do is we turn on the heaters, warm up the entire system, and then turn on each different instrument and electrical components and test them to make sure everything works. So there are a series of steps that were followed. And then one of the main things, actually one of the major achievements of S.M.A.P. is that it carries this huge antenna. And it's an antenna that's 6 meters in diameter.
Wow.
It's huge, and it weighs just about 100 pounds, so it's very light. And in order to put it in, to launch it into space, we had to fold it like a capture almost.
Wow.
It had to really fit in a very small space. So it's very light. It opened up during, I think it was over the course of a couple of hours, we opened it up. And this is really the major engineering achievement of S.M.A.P., this structure. And this is the largest antenna, rotating antenna that NASA has ever put up in space.
Wow. And so when it's fully open, then that's when you can start collecting data. So it's actually like you're mapping data? Yeah,
so not quite. We had to open it, then we did a little bit of testing, make sure everything was okay, it opened correctly. And then another thing we had to do was we had to rotate it. So that's part of our design, rotating this antenna. And so it rotates at about 14.8 revolutions per minute.
Oh, wow.
And this creates a swath on the surface of the Earth that's about 1,000 kilometers. All right, and it's this swath that allows us to map the entire surface every 3 days.
Wow. So literally it goes around the Earth in 3 days' time?
No, it actually goes around the Earth a couple of times a day.
Yeah.
Right, but it goes over the same, it observes the same spot every 3 days.
Oh, I see, yes. Wow.
So it's in what's called a near-polar sun-synchronous orbit, and it goes over the equator about 6 a.m., 6 p.m.
So how long did it take before you really could start accumulating data?
So it took about 3 months, this commissioning phase, and then we started the science phase, and that's the phase where we could continuously start collecting data and produce soil moisture products. Okay, so the science phase started around mid-April of last year. Okay, so we're coming up it's been about a year now of continuous data collection.
Wow.
So here we see that swath that the satellite sees of the surface of the Earth. And one of the great things about the type of technology that we're using is that it allows us to see the surface of the Earth regardless of any type of cloud condition. So we can measure soil moisture regardless of whether it's day or night, or if it's cloudy or foggy or there's smoke.
Wow. And that just gives an idea there, like going around the Great Lakes area, that's the size of the pattern.
Swath.
The
That's
swath.
right, yes,
Wow.
of the area that's being observed.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So what kind of data are you getting from watching all of this?
Yeah, so what we're seeing are variations in soil moisture globally, right? And so 1 year is not such a long baseline, but we do see a couple of very interesting things. For example, we do see the drought here in California.
Wow.
We see in India, for example, the monsoon season hitting in,
Wow.
at the onset of the monsoon, and everything just getting very wet in a very short amount of time. So we're seeing things like that at the moment, and we're collecting really great data. And by the way, so NASA has a free data policy, so all of NASA satellite data, including S.M.A.P, is freely available online for anyone, anywhere around the world that's interested.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Quite an impressive website. I looked at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A
A lot of great information.
And this is,
So this is a map of the type of coverage that we're getting over Earth. So this
Yes.
isn't real data, it's simulated data.
Simulated.
So if you look at the western US, it's a bit drier, the eastern US wetter. If you look at the Amazon region, much wetter. So the dark blues are areas that are wetter, and the yellow areas are areas that are drier.
wow. Now you're also following the patterns of El Nino. Is that a different satellite that's analyzing that data?
Correct, yes. So it's a different satellite, and that observes the oceans, and something very important is to observe these phenomenon like El Nino, because they have huge impacts not only here in California but all over the world.
Wow.
And the oceans are so large that really the only way to study them and monitor them is through satellites. I'll explain a little bit about El Nino. El Nino is a natural phenomenon, and it's cyclical, so it occurs approximately every 3 to 8 years. The really intense El Ninos occur on the order of every 18 years or so. And what we're seeing right now is a very intense El Nino, this 2015, 2016. And the last time we had such a strong El Nino was 97, 98. So, and El Nino is a current. It's a warm water current that forms in the tropical Pacific, and it's about 3 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than normal.
Oh, wow.
And it
Which means?
Which has implications, yeah. So some areas get drier, other areas get wetter, and it affects, it has effects all over the world, El Nino. And yeah, some areas can get a little bit wetter or a little bit drier, other areas can, are seeing inundations and droughts, so extreme events.
Wow.
Right.
I think a really good question here would be, how do humans, I mean, this may seem common sense to you, but a lot of people are asking themselves, how do humans really actually impact this? And what can we do to lessen that, that extreme?
So what we're seeing is that man-made or human-induced climate change is affecting the intensity of El Nino. And it's very probable that in the future we'll be seeing more intense El Ninos like the one we've seen this round, in this round, 2015, 2016.
So what can humans do, let's say, what can we do as individuals? Drive our cars less, recycle? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a really great point. I personally think that there's a lot of things that we can do, and if we all do them, then we can create a big change. Yeah, but even you as an individual can make a change. You know, and little things at home, turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth, when you're showering, make sure you don't have any leaks in your toilet, water your lawns during the hours of the day when you don't have peak sunlight. For example, water your lawns before 9 a.m. or after 4 or 5 p.m. when it's not so hot and you don't have excess evaporation. So things like that, and be conscious of what you buy, and you have a say of what you buy. So buying things with a lot of packaging, do you really need all that packaging? Do you need to use plastic bags? Just being more conscious of what we consume and what we buy, I think is a big first step.
That's incredible.
And I personally think that living up to the 3 R's, the 3 famous R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, out of which reduce is the most important one, and that's the one that has the most impact.
So every year, JPL N.A.S.A has an open house, correct? And I hear great things about it, and I'm really looking forward to going. What date is it in this year, 2016?
Yes, so this year open house will be on June 4th and 5th. So it's a weekend, Saturday, Sunday. And this year we're doing it a little bit different from previous years. You need a ticket this time around.
So by the time this show airs, all those tickets may be gone?
It's probable, yes. So the ticket, it opens on April 25th. You can go online through the JPL website and get your tickets, and it's on a first come, first served basis. So yes, by the time this airs, there's a chance that all the tickets are gone.
So what kind of things do, I mean, there's robotics, there's mission control, you can see models of, like full-size models of like Curiosity, the Mars rover, and other satellites, I assume. There's someone told me there's Ask a Rocket Scientist, and there's a rocket scientist there with a sign, Ask a Rocket Scientist. So now, what is your favorite part of it? Do you have a favorite part?
I think it's all great. I love all of it, and even for me, it's an exciting experience because I get to see other parts of JPL that I don't normally get to see. So I encourage everyone, if you have the chance, go online, see if you can get a ticket. It's a fabulous experience for people of all kids of all ages, including grown-ups. Everyone is going to enjoy it. It's a great experience.
So, thank you so much for being on the show. What's coming up next for you in your work right now?
Well, great question. I continue to be involved with S.M.A.P. and looking forward to extending that baseline and analyzing it further to see what kind of changes are going on.
That's fantastic, and let's keep in touch, and so we can follow what your work is leading to, so we can educate the public about what's going on out there in technology and science and fantastic, Erika. Thank you so much for being on the NOWMAN show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Dan, and I'll be happy to bring you an update next time.
Excellent, excellent. This is Niswander, and you are watching the NOWMAN show. Hello, this is Niswander, and I'm here at the Armory Center for the Arts for an installation here from the Los Angeles Poverty Department, and I'm here speaking with Kevin Michael, and also Henriette Brouwers. Thank you for being on the NOWMAN show.
Yeah. Oh, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, your role technically is as a performer and also an outreach director.
Yeah, well, I live, work in Skid Row. I'm a 12-stepper, so I got sober in Skid Row. And my work with the LAPD, the Los Angeles Poverty Department, is just a natural outgrowth of that because LAPD is a community-based organization, arts organization.
That's wonderful. And Henriette, you are the assistant director, correct?
The associate director. Yeah, well, John and I we direct the shows together, and we do a lot together.
We are much more than a community theater group. LA Poverty Department, our LAPD, tells the story, the rest of the story, and they tell it in our voices, and it is such a, I hate the word empowering, but it's such a gathering of spiritual forces that it transcends just theater. Well, it's just like the difference between theory and practice, book learning and experiential learning. And that's the thing that John and Henriette try and help us articulate, right? Our truths, our narratives. What fuels development? It's about, and this is a powerful piece because it's about the community saying, we don't want another alcohol outlet that was built with public money, our tax building, in a building, a beautiful structure that's been built with public funds for recently homeless, people recently released from incarceration, people that are chronically mental ill. They actually give out meds in this building. We organize to appear at the hearing and to protest it. And John and Henriette help with the poverty department because most of us live in the Skid Row community. And so the people came together and we told our story. And so for once we were able to get the powers to be to slow down and listen to us as we told them what we wanted and what we didn't want.
Fantastic.
And they changed their opinion. Yes. The committee came in, listening to the zoning administrator, thinking that they were just going to sign off on his recommendations, which usually is the case. But as they listened to testimonies from the people, and we only got 1 minute because there were like 60 people testifying. Tonight you only see, maybe 15 of them, not even. And so, they actually got personally affected by the stories and changed their mind. And they decided in the end to not allow the use of the alcohol permit, for the building. So that was, something that rarely happens. And of course, for us, a major victory because nobody ever listens to us anyway, So that was huge, yeah.
And so theater with the poverty department does give us a voice.
Yes.
And it gives, and I was trained as a lawyer. I know how to be an advocate, but the way that we craft our stuff very often, even though we have a point of view, it's using art as a form to advocate and enlighten. It's not as much in your face as I was once trained to do. Much of it is from the transcripts of the actual hearings.
You're telling human stories, and that is so important. I can't underscore that enough because that's what makes the difference. What you go from the heart.
And I hope that some of your readers, some of your viewers, will actually come down and bear witness to this. We've got a lot of good stuff. Skid Row is probably the world's largest recovery community. Since I'm a 12-stepper, and that's where my life got saved, I think that it's the world's largest, but a lot of people are being helped, and we can do more together.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Kevin and Henriette. This is Niswander on the NOWMAN Show at the Armory Center for the Arts in Pasadena for the installation of the Los Angeles Poverty Department.